distinguished guests, on behalf of Stellenbosch University, it is a wonderful opportunity for me, a great honor to be here to say something at this SPL's NDP conference, which kicked off this morning. And I couldn't do the opening because we have we have an international conference at Stellenbosch University that started this morning, looking at how you can think about the graduate of a university as a person who understands service and learning as the same thing. And to get ways in which people complete their studies and understand that when you leave the university, you must know communities that you do not come from, and you know their leaders, and you know how to interact with them, and you have learned to serve everybody. So I thought I'd come this evening because you had a meal with it, and a very important topic that you've gone through this day, and I could hear from you what happened in the course of the day before I say something. So I have the distinct honor to say something about this very important national development plan of our country. The first thing that I want to say about the national development plan, whatever people say about it, nobody else has a plan. That is the reality. So we can have the fight, we can have a dirty fight or a clean fight, but the end of it is, if we continue for another 20 years without planning well, without clear indications of where we want to stand in 2030, we have ruined this country finally. So the greatness for me of the National Development Plan is that it is a call to all sectors of society to take up their responsibility and step into a very important space. It is the people who become future makers. It's government, it's the state organs, the business sector, trade unions, the faith community, NGOs, and of course, the education sector. Now, I don't know if you can remember, there was that very important time in the first years of our democracy when Madiba did one very important thing, apart from all the other things. But this one he focused on, and he made it clear this is what he's going to do. He called every single CEO that he could get on the other side of a cell phone. And he had just one question: will you help me build a school? And many CEOs stepped up to the challenge. Many people internationally came to the country and said, I will help. Many people, probably some of you around this table, were some of those who received that call and took that responsibility and said, I will do something about it. I will help you. And he did it for young people, for young children, because he looked at these children being born, and he started to say to himself, these children somebody must work on their future. And he asked everybody to help him who could. And now if you go read through the many things that he said, the one thing that stands out and comes back every time is this sentence: the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world is education. That was, in his mind, very clear. So now, the children who went to his schools, and maybe the schools that some of you built with him, or some people that you know built with him, the children from those schools are now entering universities. And I wake up with this question. If he would call me today, what is it that he'd ask me to do? And it would be great if everybody starts their day with that question. So what would he do now? And perhaps he'd say, help me secure access to the universities for my children, from the schools that you helped me build, and for the processes that you helped me take them through. And now the question is, how do we do it? Because this is the second question of future. It is what will happen in 2030. They are turning up. They are some of the brightest young people. And we can see them, we know them, we work with them, we talk with them, and we know that this is a moment as critical as 1994 for this country, because it's the question about where will they live, what kind of future will they have, what kind of base in the economy will they be able to work with, what is the reality for them in terms of jobs that they may have, and what reality can they bring to improve the generation coming after them. So for me, when I look at the National Development Plan, it is, as it says itself, it is a plan to remake the country by 2030. And I should actually only talk about higher education, as you can see from the topic, which he forgot to introduce to you. Universities are there for a number of key reasons. Firstly, it produces the knowledge that society needs to make progress in all kinds of fields. Secondly, universities equip young people with the skills that the economy requires, the economy which is going to become more and more so a knowledge economy. And thirdly, universities empower communities for critical citizenship. At Stellenbosch University, all of these ideas have crystallized into a science for society approach. And we are using the power of science to tackle seemingly intractable problems in society. I'm sure you've seen the newspapers yesterday, don't worry about today's, but yesterday's newspaper that told you the very important story about the African Cancer Institute that we have established that will connect to the biggest cancer research in the States of America, the biggest research in the world. And we will become partners and begin to work on something that we should overcome by 2030. In our research, in our learning and teaching, and in our community interaction, we have decided to work on a number of areas connected to the National Development Plan, to eradicate poverty, to promote human dignity and health, to entrench democracy and human rights, to strengthen peace and security, and balance a sustainable environment with a competitive industry. And we decided to call this the Hope Project because we think it brings a certain clarity on a number of very important questions. But many people do not know where we started with this notion of the Hope Project. Now, there was a Brazilian educator who was appointed at one point as what we would call a minister of education in Brazil in the late 60s, and his job was basically to begin to look at how you transform the education system of Brazil. And he walked once down the street and he saw a young man, and he thought, let me go to this young man and ask him this question. And he asked him the question, he said, "Sir," he asked the question, "how do you see your future?" And he said, "Sir, I have no tomorrow that is any different from today, that is any different from yesterday." And then he realized it doesn't help that he transforms the whole educational system and all the curricula of every single school, and it does not bring in the understanding about a possible new, greater future for every person. So he went out and he wrote a book called The Pedagogy of Hope. And that is where we got our engagement with this notion of hope. And what it basically means, why is hope so important as a concept? Because in the first place, it brings into focus the debate and the question about the future. You can't talk about it if you don't question the issue of the future. And secondly, it turns all these answers of this young men around over on their heads, because now you can't say there will be no future that is different, no tomorrow that is different from today. You have to begin to ask, what is it going to be? What must I do to get there, etc. So it also it presupposes agency, it presupposes a vision about the future, it presupposes the fact that you begin to wonder about your future, not simply as a reproduction of your past. And that is what we try to achieve at Stellenbosch University. Help people understand that there are questions, pre-questions to living, to becoming a great nation, to becoming a citizen in this country. So we started to think about Madiba's main commitment, started to think about this notion of hope that has all these, that presupposes so many important thought patterns that you have to work through before you can actually engage it. And then we got to the understanding that what universities do is work for the next generation. They work for the next generation. Begin to look at where are they coming from, where are they going to, how do we build the right knowledge and put it in position so that they can get to the right places. We know also that before they finish, 50% of that knowledge is obsolete. But we therefore have to think carefully about how do we teach, what do we teach, how do we help them engage with knowledge that turns up all of the time in their hand phones, in their mobile phones. And we have to struggle to understand also how do we deliver to a new kind of student, to a new kind of person that should understand that there is a future, not just another website on the internet, and to begin to work towards that. So we have all these talks about what are you going to do, what are you going to become, how do you see your future, do you know the future is a great thing? And we do all kinds of studies around future, and you can see from all of these important signals that we're giving it is about the African future. Because it is a reality in many parts of the continent already, but it is not yet embedded in all of the individuals of the continent. And we have to begin to think how you get that embeddedness. So in the Hope Project, we have a number of great initiatives. We do work in Worcester for clinical training in our Kwanda Rural Clinical School. And the reason for that is because we know that we have to get more doctors competent and confident about working in rural communities. And we see them going there and making a difference in those communities. And we work on the food security initiative because we know that there is a disjuncture in this country. We do produce enough food for everybody, but there are many children that are stunted in their growth, too many for the food that we have produced, and there are many women that do not access nutritious food for all kinds of reasons, even the question of whether they can afford it. So universities can no longer, in a developing country, afford to be ivory towers. They can't afford to simply sit back and say, maybe in 100 years we will make a breakthrough. There may not be 100th year. So the big question is, what do we do right in the next few years to make the right impact? So we do lots of research, and many of our conferences focus on the question of how do we make an input in the National Development Plan. Our Vision 2030, which we have worked on for a long time, and on that also we did all kinds of research about what's happening to universities worldwide, the strong and big universities. And we have taken 2030 as our horizon. We said right now, if you take this National Development Plan, if you take this university and its strengths and its possibilities and its capabilities, what is it that we need to connect these two well? How can we stand up in 2030 and face this country? For us, it is no longer the question how we can stand up today. It is actually the question, how do we stand up in 2030, face this country, and say this is what we have contributed in what the goals were of this country, and in what the agreements was at the time when we make our very important compact. So we are looking at a number of things and a number of very important areas. One is that of becoming more inclusive by broadening access to the university and access of the university to new knowledge markets. So we're doing two things there. The first is we've done a lot of work around securing that we bring in parallel language medium programs in our university. Our biggest faculties will start next year, and we will see a more inclusive community. We want Stellenbosch not to move from one exclusive institution to another exclusive institution. We want it to become the real South African question, facing the inclusivity of a nation that has to go forward together. But we also know that many people in future will get clever. Many students will get clever and will find out that there isn't going to be free education soon, because nobody's got that money to make that possible. But it is possible to go work first, and while you work, access knowledge. And what we want to do is to secure that we use the space that we have on a satellite, and the space that we will grow in broadband internet contact, to be able to access a market of people who will say, I will go work first. I'm not going to be like the others who go into debt first. I go work first, and then while I work, I want to know who can deliver to me. And our university must be able to do that, must be able to look in new ways about where are the students that we can connect with. And the SPL is an important role player in growing that presence. And then also, we want to become more innovative. We produce most of the research in this country across the board, but we have to look at how do we take it to the next level of innovation. And it's a big challenge for us, and we're working very hard on it. But also, how do we secure that our students are entrepreneurial, both as entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, and as corporate entrepreneurs. And thirdly, we want to become more future-focused. You know, when I was appointed at Stellenbosch University, around every corner somebody said, Stellenbosch University is something historical. It's either historical, a language university, or historical, a race university, or whatever connection they wanted to use, or sometimes religious, Christian, etc. And the reality is what we had to begin to do is ask the question, what do we want to be in future? And we want to be known, and this is what we say in our strategy, we want to be known as the university that increased its impact on society between now and 2030. And we are working very hard at it, and hope to be able to show at that time that we're there. And we know the next generation will be the real judges of the realities that we're building now. So I must say thanks to everybody for bringing this symposium, this conference together. Thank you to the organizers, the people who worked hard, who had so many meetings with me and helped me understand how important it is that we do this in this very broad context with so many people and role players and leaders around these tables. So thank you to the donors, thank you to the sponsors, and thank you to the presenters and participants. Now, we know that an important part of looking at 2030 has to do with how do we secure that we have critical citizens everywhere, critical citizens that are critical about themselves, that are prepared to take criticism from others around them, people who are willing to be transparent and accountable, people who accept that when they make mistakes, that accountability is a serious part of building this 2030 society, and people who know that our values will drive us into 2030. And so an important part of our work is to secure that we continue to strengthen our democracy, build our constitutional strength and agility, and continue to look at how together we look back one day and say, started with that National Development Plan. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Many success. Much great success with this conference. And I like the idea of taking national development from design to delivery. And it's not for certain parts of us. It must be for 54 million South Africans, or it will not be for anybody. Thank you.